All right, here we go, guys. We're going to go over the last part of the notes on this, on the inverse trig. So this is the front side of the last page of that packet. Really not a whole lot new on this, so this should be quicker. You can just see with these problems, you just have two of the problems in one. So kind of like when you follow any order of operations, when you go back to PEMDAS, you always do it's in parentheses first. So I'm going to do this, and then whatever this answer is, I'm going to take the sign of it. Now what you're going to see is for these first 6 problems, you're going to see some of them, they just cancel each other out, and some of them they don't. So, and I'm going to do all these problems on this last side. So if I were to do this, arc sine of 1/2, well, the y value is 1/2 at, was it pi over 6? And then if I take the sine of pi over 6, it gives me the same thing back. So I get 1/2. So this is kind of one example where they really just kind of cancel each other out. Sine and arc sine because they're inverses. But they don't always cancel each other out. All right, number 2 is kind of an example. When we do this, the sine of 3 pi over 2. Well, the sine of 3 pi over 2, the y value there is -1. And then if I take the arc sine of it, well, when I do the arc sine, I'm not going to get 3 pi over 2 because this is not in the range for arc sine. This, the answer is going to be -pi over 2, which is basically coterminal with the 3 pi over 2. All right, so the reason why 2 didn't cancel out is this is not in the range. I apologize, I know this is a little sloppy. It's not in the range. Remember, arc sine, the range is -pi over 2 to pi over 2. All right, and 3 pi over 2 is not in the range. Now you're going to see the same thing happen for the other ones. So when I do cosine, arc cosine of -√2 over 2, so that's in the second quadrant, and that's going to be, what, 3 pi over 4? And then if I take the cosine of it, well, it gives me the same thing again. So this is an example where they cancel each other out. All right, so these just kind of cancel each other out. Now this, again, number 2, you're going to see this is going to be an example where they don't, because 3 pi, the last thing I'm going to do is take the arc cosine. 3 pi is not in the range for arc cosine. So if I actually did this, cosine of 3 pi, that's coterminal with pi. So this is -1. And then if you take arc cosine of -1, well, remember the range for arc cosine is the top 2 quadrants, 0 to pi. And this answer here is pi. All right, and again, they don't cancel out because this is not in the range. All right, you're going to see the same thing happen for the tangents. For arc tangent, when it's -1, well, that answer has to be in the 4th quadrant, so it's going to be a negative angle. That's going to be, what, -pi over 4. And then when you take the tangent of that, it gives you the same thing. The tangent of -pi over 4 is -1. So that's where it cancels. And really, whenever you have the trig function and its inverse, these always cancel each other out, especially with arc tangent, because this could be anything. The range is anything. With these ones, as long as this is between -1 and 1, they're always going to cancel out. Now, number 2, again, this is going to be an example where they don't cancel out, because eventually you're going to take arc tangent. That's going to be the last thing. And this 3 pi over 4 is not in the range for arc tangent. So if I did this, tangent of 3 pi over 4, that would be -1. And when we take the arc tangent of -1, this answer has to be in the 4th quadrant. This is -pi over 4. And remember, the range for arc tangent is the same as the range for arc sine or inverse sine, which is this. And 3 pi over 4 is not in this range. All right? Okay, so I'll just stop it there, and then we'll just do one more video for the bottom.